everyone, Cassie here. Welcome back for another video here on my YouTube channel. Today we're celebrating Crafty Meraki's 4th birthday, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but let's talk about the products I'm using. This is the brand new fern lattice background. It's beautiful. I also have the terrarium add-on that goes with the succulents that you see right here. It's a big die set and they go so well together. When I flip this over, you're going to see how that can come together. Very excited about that. And then I have this previously released Hay die set. So we're going to start off by making some backgrounds. I have some mixed media paper and it measures 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, so it's perfect for the front of an A2 size card. And I've brought in some Lindy's Gang powders. Now I've been using these quite a bit frequently, but this first one we're going to use is called Roll in the Hay, and I've just sprinkled that all over that mixed media paper, and I'm going to spritz that with some Glitz Spritz. This is like the fluffy snow, I think is what it's called. And what I've recently discovered with these backgrounds that I really like, you could leave it as it was when I spritzed it, but I like to bring in a water brush and just kind of pounce that color around and focus on certain colors in certain areas. That way I'm not mixing all those colors all the way up and I'm still getting a good amount of texture. And in between I heat set and then I sometimes bring in a little bit more powder and a little bit more water. You could really add the texture by adding different colors of powder if you wanted, but I'm going to stick to, with each of these, mostly the same powder on top of each other. I'm going to heat set this, and then once I have that pretty much dry, I'm going to bring in a little bit more of that Roll in the Hay, and I'm going to sprinkle that just at the bottom. I really want to add a little bit of texture down here, so I'll spritz that with just regular water, and then I am going to just heat set. I'm going right into heat setting, hoping that I can get some texture with that. And you'll notice since there's a good amount of water, it's actually pretty easy to do. So I'm just moving my heat gun around and creating the texture that way. And then take a look at how that ends up looking. I love that. I think that works out really great. That's going to work perfectly for the sand at the bottom of my terrarium. Moving on to the next one. This one's actually going to be our background. I've brought in the Every Picture Tells a Story. I'll spritz that with some water and also some of that fluffy snow Glitz Spritz. And once again, just doing the same process. I'm going to do that for all of these backgrounds, so I'm going to kind of move along pretty quickly. And once again, heat setting and moving on. Next one is going to be for our first big succulent. I'm going to bring in some Take It or Leaf It and Ears Looking at Ya Olive. I just love the cute names for these two. It's fun. Spritzing once again and keeping the one on the top and one on the bottom. That's going to help. You'll see in the end when I die cut out the different succulents how that really just comes together. And I really do like how that color mixes in the center there. So that's going to add some really great variation for the different levels of the succulents, because what you'll notice with those succulent dies is that they are in clusters. And yeah, you'll see what I'm talking about as we get there. Next one we are doing is going to be for this medium one. It's called Das Work Wine and Water Lilies Lavender. Oh no, maybe not. This one might just be the Not in a Vermilion Years. Either way, we've got all kinds here. So that's how that background ends up looking. This one I think is the Das Work Wine and Water Lilies Lavender. And so, yeah, top and bottom, different colors. Once again, spritzing and moving those colors around using a little water and the Glitz Spritz Fluffy Snow. And you'll see how they all look here in the end, but I love just making backgrounds. I could probably sit and just make backgrounds for like a whole day and then, use them on cards later, but backgrounds are where it's at for me, for sure. And then this one is the Dunkin' Biscuits Blue Green. And this one already has some glitz in it. And then I did have a little bit of purple left over, which actually turns out to be so good. I love how that looks. And then there are all of those backgrounds. I made 6 total backgrounds. And then this is the one we're going to use for that fern lattice background die. Now keep in mind this mixed media paper is a little bit thicker, almost like watercolor paper. So with a die like this, because it is fairly intricate, you're going to want to run it through your die cutting machine several times, which I did. And then I did use my pickup stick to just poke out the inside pieces, which was fairly simple, didn't take a whole lot of time. And then I'm going to go about and use the dies on all the rest of those backgrounds. The only one, the outline for the terrarium, I just used some gray cardstock. But there's our first big fern, and then here they are all cut out, and then I'm just going to poke out all the extra pieces for each one of those dies, and then we can start assembling. Now, when I put this one together, I didn't really love how it wasn't super diverse, I guess, and so I did bring in some Triple Berry Simon Hurley Create ink and a finger dauber, and I like how that looks. I think I could have gotten away with not doing that, but it does look good. So keep that in mind. You can always, add inks where you need to on these. But I like how that turned out. And then I start to sort of do it on this next one, which used that Dunkin' Biscuit blue-green. And then I just discover it probably wasn't even that necessary because you really can't see a whole lot of that. There's enough variation with the way these powders are that I stopped doing the ink after this one. I was just super happy with how they all lined up on top of each other. And so, yeah, I was really happy. So we're just using some liquid glue to adhere the pieces. They're very simple to put together. And even the succulents, even though those might look a little bit intimidating to put together, she thought of everything when she designed those. So I'll show you that here in a second after we're done putting this one together. Yeah, they're all extremely simple. And I had a good time putting these together. I think I was listening to an audiobook and just, yeah, happy as a clam. Just making a card, putting together some succulents. And I love how big these succulents are. So we've got that one. We'll move on to this next one. And this is what I was talking about. You'll notice on several of these pieces, it's the back pieces, the bigger ones, that there is a little triangle cut out in all of those. And that's all you have to do is line up that triangle and you have it exactly how you need those to line up. So there's really no guesswork. And if you're even a little bit concerned about the last few pieces, you can just look at the back of the package for the succulent dies, because that'll help a little bit. But otherwise, putting these big pieces together is super simple. Just line up that little triangle in the center. And she has it on the other big succulent also. So yeah, we're just going to glue these. And look at how those are stacking up. Because I used a couple different colors on those backgrounds for those bigger succulents, they really, really turn out super pretty. And each one would be different because your backgrounds definitely aren't going to be the same. Which I think is what makes this so much fun. So once again, easy to line up on that one. And then we just cover up that little triangle with this last big piece. And there you have our little purple pink succulent. Super cute. And then for our green succulent, same thing. Those first three pieces all have, actually first four I think, have triangles. And they're so simple to line up. You just go from biggest to smallest. I really do love how she thought of everything there. Maybe there are other companies that are doing that. If not, they should take note that because that's really cool. Because I won't lie, at first when I saw these succulents, I thought, ooh, that's going to be a challenge. So yeah, but no, it wasn't. And then in the end, the way this succulent looks too, oh, I'm so happy. I'm so happy. I just want to go and make all the different colors. And they'll all just be different. Yeah, and my fingers definitely got a little bit, it's obvious I was playing with paint. But I don't mind. All right, so once that one is put together, we're going to start piecing everything onto the sand for how we want our terrarium to look. And I followed the back of the packaging just to make it simple on myself. The only thing I didn't do is I actually didn't bring in that last long one on it. I decided to use that for the inside of my card. I just thought, yeah, I want that in there. And also, I didn't want to cover up too much of it. I thought it was so pretty that I didn't want half of it to be covered for it to fit inside of the terrarium. The stem, covering that stem doesn't bother me, but this one I would have had to cover pretty much half of it, and I really didn't want to do that. So what I'll do with the terrarium is I'm going to, or the outline of it, I'm just going to use glue on that bottom half of it, and we'll attach it down to the front of the succulents. And I think this is where, you know, liquid glue is probably best. And this stuff is pretty strong. It might take a second to grab, but once it's on there, it's on there. And then I can easily glue this down to the front of my card base if I want to. But I'm going to wait. We're going to do that last, or almost last. Maybe we won't. Maybe we'll do it now. Yep, we'll do it now. Sometimes when I'm editing, I forget. All right, so just adding little dabs of that on the outline of the terrarium and just making sure that I have that back covered. Now we do have a good amount of layers on here, so this is going to be a little bit thicker card. Not super thick, but maybe a little heavier. So keep that in mind when mailing. And then I brought in the hay dye. There are 3 layers to this actually. I only use the hay cutout and then the second shadow, or the first shadow, I guess. I didn't bring in that second shadow. But you could absolutely do that, and it definitely gives it a lot more dimension, and it looks really cool. And I'm using my reverse tweezers to hold everything. Those are always a must-have. All right, once everything's adhered on there, I can adhere it to the front of our card. And I like how it looks. I think it's going to look good. So we'll bring in our card base. It's just some white cardstock. And again, this is an A2 size card. It measured 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches and scored at 4 1/4. And I do want a little bit of a white border, so I'm just going to trim down a tiny, tiny bit on all 4 sides of my finished piece. Don't want to cut off too much, but just a little bit. And then I'll use that liquid glue on the back of that to adhere that to the front of the card. Attach that down, and then once that's down, we're also going to put our last succulent on the inside of the card. And see, that way, none of it got covered. You see the whole thing. And then we'll attach the hay down to the top. And then once that's on there, that's actually going to finish off this card. Now, like I said, this is a part of an anniversary hop. So excited. Head down to my description box down below to check out all the details for the hop. You don't want to miss it. There's a prize involved. So yeah, if you like this video, hit that like button. Definitely consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. And as always, I'll see you very soon in another video. Bye, everybody.